what happens when I click here, or when there's an error message, or how does this connect to our comms journey? So the same way I hope everyone can hear me and see the slides, but I'll do my best to make sure that it's not dependent on you seeing the slides. I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you guys about this topic. A quick intro. I am a content design manager at Jisr, a Saudi HR B2B SaaS company functioning across the region. And I think this is something that every design team is facing right now, and that is how to use AI in our processes, where it helps and where it hinders. So today I'm going to look at this through the lens of a content designer. So of course, I have to link it to storytelling, because every great story has a through line. And I believe your product and every product needs one too. And this is what I think AI won't build for you. And I'm going to get into that in a bit more in the presentation itself. So first of all, what do I mean by a through line? So in the classic storytelling framework, a through line is the foundational core you feel throughout the entire story. No matter where you are, no matter who's talking, no matter how the plot twists and turns, there's a thread that connects everything together. So we have 3 examples here of 3 books that are very famous. And if you haven't read the book, maybe you've watched a movie or 2. So you'll be able to link back to those. And the first is The Lord of the Rings. And I would argue that the through line here is to destroy the ring. The world gets bigger, darker, more complex, but that goal never changes. You're connected throughout the entire story of that one main goal to destroy the ring. Then you have something like 1984 by George Orwell. And the through line here, I would argue, is more of a question. Can truth survive power? And if you're reading this book, you can feel tension in every single word. The story advances, but the tension is always there. It's always omnipresent, and it's always linking back to this central question. And then the last example I'll share here is Harry Potter for a couple of reasons. First, because I assume everyone's read or at least seen one of the movies, but also because across 7 books, the genres change drastically from the first to the last. If you go back to the first book, it's been a while since I read it, but it's really a children's book. When you get to the 7th book, it's very much more complex. It's much darker, and it has a different genre. But you're still rooted in that through line. You know you're in the world of Harry Potter. You never lose that sight, and it's always a story about belonging. So a through line is the thread that connects everything from start to finish. It's what makes a story feel coherent. It's what makes a story feel guided and purposeful. And I think linking back to something Amber was saying in the intro, that you don't necessarily notice it when it's working. It's not like you're reading Harry Potter thinking like, yes, this sentence links back to the core of the story of belonging, the through line. No, but you will notice it if it breaks. So maybe you're reading a book that is not as well written, and you get to a paragraph that just kind of shifts you fully out of the world of that book that was being created. Or a character starts to say something that seems very out of character to everything that's been defined so far. And that's when you notice a break in the through line. And products are no different. Products and services, they tell stories too. It's not in chapters, it's in screens, in flows, in messages, in moments. And the story that they're telling needs to be connected at every stage of the journey, no matter if you're offline or online, whether it's a notification, an email, or a product flow. And I'm going to walk you through some examples of products that do that really well, where the through line is very clear. So Duolingo. I think most people in the room will also have, if not used, heard of Duolingo. And here I'd argue that their through line is that learning should feel achievable and learning should feel fun. And no matter where you are in their product, it's removing that intimidation. It's making learning feel achievable. And this is done in the tone, the pacing, the nudges, the feedback, whether that's haptic or visual or animations. It all aligns. That voice never breaks, even when you encounter an error message. And this is very much the fundamental work of content design, is that one layer, 2 layers, 3 layers, 4 layers deeper that connect all these moments and make a product feel purposeful and guided. And then the next example I'm going to walk through is one that maybe people are less familiar with in the room, but I have two reasons for using this as an example. First, because it was very top of mind when I was building this presentation, as I recently had to apply for a new passport. And as a UK citizen, I had to go to gov.uk to do that. Gov.uk, for those who don't know, is the governmental department website that kind of houses all the department services for any government interaction you're having with the UK, whether that's applying for a passport, doing your taxes, applying for citizenship, or even visas. And the second reason I chose this example is because gov.uk is actually the birthplace of content design. Sarah Winters is the founder and coiner of the discipline and the term content design. She's also the person who wrote the book, Content Design. And I think that work is so visible in the product. The through line here is that there's clarity over complexity. And that's also one of the fundamental principles of content design itself. The same voice is used across hundreds of services in incredibly complex and technical services like tax and applying for passports. But you're still effortlessly guided between these complex and seemingly separate organizations and systems. And this is really the work of strategic thinking that underpins content design. It's kind of the foundation of the work that content design does. And this is what I argue that AI won't build for you. And it's that through line, that connecting thread throughout the product, that content design thinking, that service design thinking, linking systems and linking your infrastructure together. Your AI doesn't know how to decide what voice you should be using. It doesn't resolve meaning across the system, and it doesn't connect teams, tools, and features. And AI can do a lot, and it can help us in some of these processes. But it can give you coherence if that coherence, that strategy, that structure doesn't already exist, hasn't already been defined. So I want to do a quick pause here. You're all really small in my view, so I can't really see you, but I would love if I could get a hands up on who in the room has used AI to create something that's maybe looked impressive. Maybe it follows your design system. It has like the right corner radius, the right colors, the right font, and maybe even the terminology, the language is aligned to your guidelines. But the moment you click once or twice through the system, something breaks, something feels off. You try to go from one feature to the next, and you feel like you're navigating through two completely different products, or you actually can't even complete what you're trying to do, even though it looks great. You know, to get a hands in the room if I can see people. But I'll assume that like this meme girl meme that everyone has got their hands up, because I know I am guilty of it, and I have also seen it in my workspaces, where you get a beautiful looking product. The feature looks shiny, new, aligned to your design system even, but the infrastructure is not there. The logic isn't connected. The experience isn't aligned. It's missing that through line. And that's because meaning is always the first thing to break. The surface can look perfect, but if it doesn't function, solve a user problem, or connect to the rest of your project and continue that through line, customers get frustrated, they drop off, they churn, they contact support, and they have those experiences exactly like Amber was saying earlier, where this wasn't designed for the purpose, right? And they really feel that break. So before AI can support your product, there are some things that I think foundational strategic thinking that you need to do. And I want to stress here that it's not a one and done thing. I believe that you have to do this thinking for every feature, every interaction, and link it back to that bigger story to create meaning and a connected product. Otherwise, you're just creating fluff, smoke and mirrors, things that look pretty but don't function. And that's not the core of what we do as product people, right? So this is like not an exhaustive list of things, but a list of kind of some of that strategic content design and service design thinking that needs to be done. This is things like a clear understanding of who the service is for. It seems like a simple question, but I think sometimes that gets lost in some of those business decisions. Clarity on what problem you're optimizing for, and this is both at a system level, at a product company level, at a feature level, at an interaction level. User stories that reflect real needs and behaviors. I know there's lots of conversations right now on how to use AI to kind of mimic real users, but I think we'll always we'll never beat out having real conversations with our users and watching them use our products and seeing where they struggle and where those breaks happen. And then things like service design blueprints that show how everything's connected. How do we go from the offline experience of getting a marketing email onto the product, onto the onboarding flow, an upsell journey, a nudge, a customer service representative reaching out to you, a phone call, like what is happening under the hood and how is it all connected? And then things like your UX content guidelines, voice and tone guidelines. And then I think a big one that is one of the things I see break the most is alignment on these things across product, across marketing, across customer experience and support. Any place that touches your customer, I see quite a lot of break where people are using AI differently across the org. And you then start to create a Frankenstein of this through line that changes depending on whoever in the organization has created it. And the user feels that. I read an article recently that I feel like sums up this idea, and it was by Yvonne Gando, who's a conversational designer at Salesforce. And she said her goal was to enable AI to act less like a tool and more like a trusted teammate. And this really resonated because you wouldn't hand over a project to one of your teammates and expect them to just design it without any strategic thinking, without any alignment, without any understanding how the logic connects from one system to the next. What happens when I click here or when there's an error message? Or how does this connect to our comms journey? So the same way we wouldn't expect a person just to come in and take on this project without doing that strategic and foundational thinking, documentation, alignment, we can't expect AI to do that for us either. And this is where I really think service design and content design thinking, no matter who is doing this work and what title you have, it's the infrastructure that holds up your product. It's the through line that carries everything. If we don't know how systems are connected, if we don't know how we're carrying that through line from one point to the other, we're going to build disjointed products that don't answer the user needs of our customers. Because at the end of the day, AI follows the through line that you design. So if we're not giving AI the tools that it needs in order to create good work, we can't expect it to reason without solid, foundational, documented, strategic thinking. And I know that this is kind of the foundational work that for years before AI even existed that we put off as product teams and design teams and beyond us. But I believe that these foundational core strategic thinking that, again, I'll repeat, I think needs to happen continuously. It's not a one and done. They're more important than ever. So I'll leave you guys with this question. Before you dive into AI, first make sure you know, and everyone else in your team and your company knows, what story your product is telling and how every interaction connects back to this story and how everything is linked together. Thank you so much. I really appreciated the time to discuss this topic and really think about it a little bit deeper. And I'm really excited to hear the panel's perspective on this too. And if anyone is ever in Riyadh in the next few months, let me know. I'll be here for a while, so I would love to connect.
Hi, my name is Lucas. I also work with Talabat. Actually, we're at the same time in Talabat. Congrats with KSA. I just want to get to know more about like regional specifics. So you moved from Dubai to KSA. So what are the differences in this area between these two countries? Are there any? And what were like things that shocked you when you moved to KSA from business perspective?
That's a very cute question. So differences between here, Dubai, and KSA when it comes to product, content design, how are you seeing the two different
It's a great question. Yeah, so I think Dubai, there is a huge importance for localization, but I think that is 10 times more important in Saudi. So the localization conversation is really huge in the region, with Arabic and English having equal weight, of Arabic more. So I think that conversation is a really interesting one and a big difference, I think, from the work I was doing in the UAE versus a Saudi company. And I think even more interesting when you add the layer of AI on top of that, because AI currently has been optimized for English a lot of the time, and AI kind of lags behind in supporting on Arabic. So we're seeing a gap kind of in how we're able to use AI to support our processes in English within the content design work, and how that affects our Arabic, which is actually our most important language in the region. And especially making sure that even things like dialect are considered, because as we all know, dialects are different across the different regions, and AI also hasn't really got a good hold on Arabic dialects yet. So I think there's a lot of work to do, both from a technical perspective in AI, of growth in how we can generate content, and even structures in the Arabic language and design, and then how we bridge that gap between English and Arabic.
Hi there. I'm off camera, but hopefully you can hear me. Thanks for the talk. Which AI tools have you found it best to engage with when understanding your need for the through line? Have you found particular tools more useful than others?
So which tools are best? So I think there are different tools for different areas. I think one of the most user-friendly one that I think all of us are familiar with is ChatGPT. And it's really great for adding custom GPT. So something that we've done within Jisr, which me and my team created, is an AI UX writing assistant, where basically we've trained it to know our UX style guidelines, our glossaries, and our product designers and engineer counterpoints can use this tool in order to do the first draft of content on some of those more surface level requests, to free up our time as content designers to work on more of the strategic and structure stuff that I was talking about today in this conversation. But I think there's a lot more exploration that I know I need to do on other AI tools, and depending on if you're coming at it from a marketing angle versus a product angle. But what I would say is that whatever tool you use, I don't think that foundational and strategic thinking changes necessarily. Again, it's just a different tool coming at it from a different angle. So yeah, I think it's just about finding the right tool that works for whatever it is that you're optimizing for in the moment.
Hello, nice, really nice talk. Also, I really like your glasses. My question is, you mentioned that you have to train the AI with foundational work. So what would be the best way to go about training the AI? Like maybe do you have a process or something that would help reduce the time? Because I think right now, what I struggle with is I spend a lot of time training my AI, to the point where it can be kind of cumbersome to actually do the whole training. So if there's any process or anything that you use to train your AI.
Every tool is slightly different, but you can optimize your documentation for the tools that you're working with, and these, I think you can research this depending on the tools that you're using. But for example, I'll give you a use case. When I was building the UX writing AI assistant, I wrote the rules, and then I was testing it, and it was not following the rules. And I was like, I've given you the rules. It's super clear. Why are you not following them? But I was writing for a person rather than for an AI. So then I actually used the ChatGPT to then ask it to optimize the rules for ChatGPT. And when it optimized those rules, I fed it back into the custom GPT, and then it was following the rules. So I think it's also about learning the different rules of the different AI tools that you're using. So another tool that I've used fairly frequently is Lovable. And in Lovable, if you do, at least from my experience, if you do lots of little messages, it kind of gets lost in the instructions you're giving it. But if you give it a chunk of really defined, clear instructions that are well formatted, which is you can use your content design skills for, it tends to do better. So I think it's also about learning the tool that you're using, optimizing whatever documentation you're giving it to learn from. And then I would say also the most important thing is to keep testing it, to always review it. I like to think of the AI sandwich, so human, AI, human. So you're doing that strategic foundational documentation work, you're optimizing it, you're feeding it in, and then you're iterating with AI, and then you're also checking the output and seeing where it's not aligned with what you're asking it to do, and then you can then again optimize that process, and thinking about it the same way that you would about creating a product, right? You're just optimizing and iterating.
Hello. I wanted to ask, what processes do you have set in place for the language split?
I think every company works slightly differently, and obviously you're optimizing for the languages that you're working within. So for example, if you take Talabat, we were focused on English primarily, and then had another team that was focused more on the Arabic localization. At my current company, because Arabic is actually 97% of our users, we're optimizing for our customers and Arabic in the Saudi dialect. So we specifically hired content designers who work in both English and Arabic, and give equal weight to both in the content design process. So we're thinking about designing flows in both English and Arabic with equal weight, which I know is not a common practice for a lot of content design teams. A lot of it goes through one central language, often being English, then goes to a localization team who then, through content ops, go through all the different languages, right? But I think Saudi is a really interesting market because a lot of the companies are designing in English because of diverse team members that are across different regions. And that central language is English, so you have to still design and do business company language. But then Arabic is still extremely important, so you have to give it the same weight. So the way that we tried to solve for that problem is to have our content designers work in both English and Arabic, so giving equal weight to both languages, and making sure that we're not forgetting about the Arabic experience as part of our design process.
All right, amazing. Thank you so much, Henny, for joining us, and lovely to hear your thoughts on content design and AI. Once again, let's give her a round of applause.